Woman can't shoot. The shout echoed through Sterling arms, followed by mocking laughter. She stood alone at the edge of the firing line, wearing faded nursing scrubs and holding an old, borrowed rifle. The men around her smirked, their gear spotless, their confidence unshakable. They'd already written her off. She didn't argue. She didn't explain. She simply loaded one round into the chamber and took her stance, calm, focused, still. 3 seconds, 10 targets, 1 bullet. Silence. Then chaos. Phones dropped. Jaws hung open. A single shot had shattered their arrogance and rewritten the rules. Her name was Emily Carter, but the world would soon know her as Ghost Eye. Emily Carter didn't look like a legend. 32 years old, hair tied back in a no-nonsense ponytail, dressed in worn hospital scrubs and a jacket 2 sizes too big. Her car, a dented decade-old Honda Civic, whined as she turned into the Sterling Arms parking lot surrounded by matte black Range Rovers and trucks with tactical decals. She parked in the farthest corner, away from the stairs. Inside, her hands still smelled faintly of antiseptic. She'd just finished a 12-hour night shift in the ER. A teenager's overdose, a stabbing 3 heart attacks, and now this. The only thing heavier than the fatigue in her bones was the envelope of $20 bills she clutched in her pocket. 3 months of skipped takeout extra shifts and rationed gas money. She stood outside the gleaming glass entrance, staring at her reflection. Dark circles, a tired smile, and something deeper behind her eyes. A question. Did she still have it? The doors opened. She stepped inside, and the judgment began. The lobby of Sterling Arms looked more like a luxury car showroom than a shooting range. Marble floors, leather chairs, chandeliers. Men in matching tactical gear sipped espresso from tiny cups, laughing too loud. Their boots gleamed. Their vests were spotless. Emily stepped forward, the only one in sneakers and a hospital badge clipped to her collar. Behind the counter stood Richard Sterling III, square-jawed, tan-year-round, dressed like a SWAT officer, headed to a red carpet. His custom pistol was gold-plated. His smirk was weaponized. He looked her up and down like she'd tracked mud onto his imported rug. "Can I help you?" he asked, dragging out each word like she didn't speak English. "I'm here to shoot," Emily said, offering the envelope. "Just the range fee." He didn't even touch it. "This isn't a public park," Sterling said loud enough for others to hear. "We cater to professionals, law enforcement, operators, not nurses playing soldier." The laughter behind her spread like smoke, but Emily didn't flinch. She just said quietly, "Served." Sterling raised an eyebrow, amused. "Oh, let me guess, admin. Supply chain field medic at best." Emily met his eyes. U.S. Army. 3 tours. Behind her, a man in a designer polo let out a fake cough that sounded suspiciously like poser. Another muttered, "Bet she's never held a real rifle." Sterling leaned closer, voice dropping but tone sharp. "Look, sweetheart, this place has standards. You can't just walk in off a double shift and pretend you belong with the big boys." He flicked one of her 20s off the counter. It fluttered to the floor like trash. Someone recorded that. She bent down slowly to gather the scattered bills, the marble floor cold against her palms. Around her, laughter crackled, uncomfortable for some, gleeful for others. One man, tall and broad with a European accent, called out, "Maybe she took a wrong turn on the way to bingo night." Emily stood up, money in hand, eyes steady. "I'm not lost," she said. "You just don't know where I've been." Sterling didn't like that answer. He stepped around the counter, invading her space with the swagger of someone used to winning arguments by volume, not logic. His cologne was overpowering, expensive, sharp, and utterly fake. "You see, this place is for warriors," he said loud enough for the lobby to hear. "People who've seen action, who know what pressure feels like. Not weekend hobbyists who think watching a YouTube tutorial makes them lethal." He reached out and flicked her hospital ID like it was a joke. "St. Vincent's cute." Emily's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed calm. "I didn't come here for your approval." Sterling smirked. "Good. Because you're not getting it. Behind her, phones were still recording. A woman near the espresso bar whispered, "God, just leave already." Emily looked around, memorized the faces. Then she picked up her envelope, tucked it back in her jacket, and turned toward the door. "I'll leave," she said, "but you won't forget me." She stepped into the sunlight without slamming the door. It slammed itself. Emily didn't cry. She didn't scream. She drove home in silence, her Civic rattling over potholes like loose memories. The humiliation sat heavy on her chest, but not for herself. For every vet, every working-class woman, every overlooked person who'd ever been told they didn't belong. At home, she tossed her scrubs in the laundry and collapsed on the couch. Just 5 minutes of rest, she thought. Her phone buzzed. Then again, and again. She checked it. Dozens of messages. A text from Tommy, the Vietnam vet who ran the public range downtown Emily. "Is this you?" "It's everywhere." She clicked the link. Security footage. Sterling's voice, his smirk. Her ID badge flicked like trash. A video titled, "Elite Range. Owner. Humiliates veteran nurse for being poor already." 50,000 views. Already thousands of comments. Already people choosing sides. She pressed play. Watched herself get dismissed in high definition. Her hands didn't shake. But something inside her started to burn. By morning, the video had crossed 1 million views. Emily's name wasn't in the title, but the internet found her anyway. Screenshots of her ID, old military photos dug up by strangers. Comments flooded her inbox, some supportive, some invasive, a few vile. But the ones that mattered came from veterans. That's military stance. Look at how she doesn't flinch. Calm under pressure. That's not a civilian. Ghost eye. Could it be? Then came the one that made her heart stop. I'd recognize that posture anywhere. Wheeler, 2nd Battalion. Is that you? Ghost eye Marcus Wheeler. Her old spotter. The only one who'd ever seen her make the shot that saved 12 lives in Baghdad. The only one who still called her by the name she never asked for, but earned. Emily stared at the screen. The past she buried had just gone viral, and it wasn't going to stay buried for long. Emily didn't sleep that night. The city outside her window moved on sirens, streetlights, distant car horns, but her mind stayed locked in desert heat and rifle scopes. At 3:17 a.m., her phone buzzed again. "You always hated bullies, Carter." She froze, turned slowly. Standing by the elevator in the hospital parking garage, Marcus Wheeler. Older, now, broader, his hair streaked with gray. Still standing like a soldier. He smiled, that crooked smile she remembered from dusty rooftops, and whispered call-outs. "Been a long time," she said, voice tight. 11 years, 3 months, and 6 days, he replied. Not that I was counting. They stood in silence. Two people who'd once trusted each other with their lives, now pretending not to need anything. Finally, she asked, "How'd you find me?" "Didn't have to," he said. "The world found you first. I just followed the echo." He paused. "You ready to make some noise of your own?" Emily leaned against the cold concrete wall, arms crossed. "I'm not that person anymore." Marcus stepped closer. "Aren't you?" "Because the woman I saw yesterday, she didn't flinch. She didn't beg. She just stood there and took the hit. That's not weakness, Emily. That's control. That's training." She didn't respond. He pulled out his phone and showed her a video. Sterling again, this time in full tactical cosplay, flanked by his so-called elite team. The elite marksman. Challenge. Sterling boomed. "Open to all. Winner takes $100,000. Let's see if anyone out there is actually good enough." "He's turning the backlash into a stunt," Marcus said. "Using your humiliation to sell himself." Emily watched in disgust as Sterling posed, fired at stationary targets, and bragged about excellence. "He's betting no one will show up who can beat his team," Marcus added. "He's betting you won't show up." Emily's jaw clenched. "Tell me what you need," Marcus said. She looked at the screen again, then back at him. "Time," she said. "Then let's get to work," he replied. The next morning, Emily stood in front of her hospital supervisor's office, heart pounding harder than during any firefight. "You okay?" her supervisor asked, eyeing the dark circles under her eyes. "I need to take a leave," Emily said. 1 month. Personal." The supervisor raised an eyebrow. "You haven't taken a single day off in 3 years. I know." A pause. Then, "Is this about that video?" Emily gave a faint smile. "It's about finishing something I never should have walked away from." Approval came reluctantly, but it came. Back at home, she pulled a battered storage box from the back of her closet. Inside, her military badges, deployment photos, a desert camo scarf, and a well-worn patch that read "Ghost Eye." At the bottom, wrapped in an old t-shirt, her spotting notes still marked with sand. She sat cross-legged on the floor, holding the past in her lap. No cameras, no crowd. Just a woman making a decision to stop running from who she was and start reminding the world. Word spread fast. Whispers in veteran forums. Group chats lighting up. Old comrades reaching out, some she hadn't spoken to in years. Heard Ghost Eyes coming back. "You need gear." "We've got you. I'll fly out. Spot for you." No questions asked. But Emily turned them all down. She didn't want a team. She didn't want an entourage. This wasn't about revenge. It was about remembering who she'd always been without the noise. Marcus understood. He offered intel, but no interference. "She needs to do it her way," he told the others. "You don't rush a sniper." Each night, Emily trained alone at the edge of the city on a wind-swept public range run by Tommy, the old Vietnam vet. He recognized her immediately, though neither of them said it out loud. "You shoot quiet," he told her one evening. Emily adjusted the bolt. "That's the point." He nodded. The quiet ones always hit hardest. And under a sky full of stars, she kept practicing. Breath, focus, trigger, reset. Becoming herself again, one shot at a time. While Emily trained in silence, Sterling roared louder. His face was everywhere: interviews, live streams, promo videos. He leaned into the controversy, turning public outrage into fuel for his brand. "We welcome all challengers," he declared in one viral clip, "as long as they meet our standards." Excellence doesn't bend for sympathy. Behind him stood his SWAT-styled team, Viktor Petrov, a former Spetsnaz-turned-showman, 2 ex-competition shooters with perfect teeth, and a retired Navy contractor who looked more influencer than soldier. Their gear was flawless, their attitude smug, but the crowd ate it up. Sterling's followers flooded the comments. "Let's see her show up now. One viral video doesn't make you a shooter. Sterling's team is unbeatable." Marcus sent her a clip of Sterling winking at the camera. "Maybe the nurse will try again. Hopefully she remembers how to aim." Emily didn't reply. She just watched it twice. Then she reloaded and kept shooting. Not for the cameras, for the silence after the shot. Emily's routine became ritual. Up before dawn. Run. Stretch. Focus. Then, hours at the range, wind in her face, sweat on her back, calluses forming again on her trigger finger. No coaches, no spotters, just muscle memory sharpening into something lethal. Tommy started leaving the gates unlocked, earlier coffee brewing when she arrived. "You aiming for something big?" he asked one morning, watching her adjust for wind. "No," she said, eyes on the scope. "I'm aiming for something true." At night, she'd return to her apartment, ease. Her knees replay slow-motion footage of her sessions, then fall asleep to the steady hum of memory. She didn't just train her body. She trained her nerves. The whispers grew louder online. People speculated, debated, doubted. But Emily stayed quiet. She wasn't coming to prove the internet wrong. She was coming to remind one man and anyone like him what happens when you underestimate the wrong woman. The morning of registration arrived with a crisp wind and a sky too blue to trust. Emily pulled into the Sterling Arms parking lot in her dented Honda Civic, its paint faded, but engine steady. Around her, gleaming black SUVs and muscle cars lined the lot, plastered with decals like Operator Life and Tier 1 Mindset. Sterling had turned the competition into a media circus, banners flapping, drones buzzing overhead, food trucks selling overpriced coffee. Cameramen darted between interviews with influencers in tactical cosplay. Emily stepped out in plain jeans, a black hoodie, and a faded ball cap. No logos, no statements, just silence. Inside the registration tent, she gave her name as E. Carter and quietly handed over the fee. The volunteer barely looked up. "You'll be?" "Participant 47, she said, handing over the badge. "Good luck out there. Sterling's team is no joke." Emily just nodded. She pinned the badge to her chest. "Unit 47, Ghost Eye's original number." Let the circus begin. The first day of qualifiers played out like a reality show with a trigger finger. Cameras tracked every move. Commentators in branded polos gave live analysis like it was the Super Bowl. Spectators, mostly men in tactical vests and designer sunglasses, cheered for flashy reloads and slow-motion ricochets. Sterling's team didn't disappoint. Victor Petrov, towering and theatrical, hit every target with exaggerated movements, throwing mock salutes to the crowd. The others followed suit, clean, confident, calibrated for applause. Then came Emily. No entourage, no eye contact, just a borrowed bolt-action rifle and steady breath. She didn't miss, but she didn't stand out either. Her shots were precise, but not flashy. Her posture perfect, but quiet. She hit enough to qualify, but not enough to draw headlines. Exactly as planned. Sterling passed her once near the staging area. Didn't recognize her, just glanced at her badge and muttered, "Another weekend warrior." Emily allowed herself the faintest smile. She was invisible now. That wouldn't last. By sunset, the list was posted. Out of 50 entrants, only 12 had made the final cut. Sterling's entire four-man team, of course, a couple of decorated law enforcement officers, 3 civilian competition shooters with expensive gear and practiced media smiles, 2 silent, intense unknowns, and participant 47. No interviews, no stage time. Just a name on a board and a quiet presence no one could place. Marcus texted her a photo of the bracket. "Told you. Still deadly." She didn't reply. Instead, she stayed late at the public range that night, practicing with Tommy under floodlights. "Finals tomorrow," he asked, handing her a fresh magazine. Emily nodded. "You nervous?" She checked the scope, then the wind. "No," he chuckled. "You're the only person I've seen walk into this kind of thing like it's a lunch shift." She chambered around, settled behind the rifle. "It is," she said. "Except this time I get to fire back." Emily returned to her motel room after midnight, small, plain, and quiet. No distractions. Just her, the rifle laid out on the table, and a notebook filled with sketches of wind paths and timing sequences. On the TV, a local news anchor breathlessly previewed the upcoming finale. Tomorrow's Elite Marksman Challenge promises to be the most intense competition yet. All eyes are on Victor Petrov and Richard Sterling's elite team. She muted it. Outside the parking lot buzzed with the last-minute arrivals, spectators, bloggers, wannabe operatives. But inside, time moved slower. She stripped and cleaned her rifle with the same care she once used on patients' IV lines. Steady hands. No wasted motion. Every part inspected. Every screw tightened. Then she sat on the bed and stared at the only photo she'd brought with her Delta company. 12 soldiers. 12 lives saved by one impossible shot. One shot. One chance. One message. Emily whispered into the dark, "They think this is a competition." She looked at the rifle. "They have no idea what it really is." Dawn broke golden and hot, too beautiful for what was coming. Emily arrived early before the gates opened, parking far from the crowd. She sat in her car for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel, watching as crews set up sponsor tents and final camera rigs. Today, Sterling Arms didn't look like a shooting range. It looked like a battlefield dressed for television. By 9 a.m., the bleachers were packed. VIPs in designer sunglasses filled the front row. Drones buzzed overhead. Sterling worked the crowd in full tactical regalia, dark shades, custom rifle slung across his chest, headset mic like he was hosting a game show. "This isn't just a test of aim," he declared to the cameras. "It's a test of elite mental toughness." This is where professionals rise and pretenders get exposed. The crowd roared. Emily stood quietly near the edge of the prep zone watching the spectacle unfold. No camera crew, no spotter. Just her, a plain black cap pulled low, and the same borrowed rifle slung across her back. No one recognized her. That was the last time they wouldn't. Sterling's voice rang out over the loudspeakers, slick with showmanship. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the final challenge, 10 targets, 10 distances from 100 to 1,000 yards. Each will appear in random sequence. You get 10 bullets. That's it, the crowd murmured. Then came the twist. Oh, and to simulate battlefield conditions, we've added randomized wind machines. Gusts up to 20 mph, because real operators adapt, not complain. Laughter, applause, flashbulbs. Emily stayed still focused. She already knew, already calculated, already rehearsed every breath in her head. She watched the others. The competition shooters adjusted their digital scopes. The cops tightened their gloves. Sterling's team ran practice drills calling out wind angles with dramatic flair. Viktor Petrov stood like a statue, his expression unreadable behind mirrored sunglasses. Emily unzipped her rifle case. No biometric scope, no digital display, just steel sweat and memory. Her name still hadn't been mentioned, but the wind was shifting, and soon so would everything else. The competition began. One by one, the finalists stepped to the line. Each had 10 targets, 10 rounds, and a dozen cameras watching every move. The first few shooters, confident, loud, full of bravado, hit 5, maybe 6. Not bad. The crowd clapped politely. Then came the professionals. The ex-cop, 7 hits. A civilian shooter, with a $10,000 rifle, 8. The tension built with each name called, each shot taken, each miss met with a groan or a gasp. Then Sterling's team took the stage. They delivered. Each one sharp, composed, and media-trained. Their rifles gleamed. Their spotters called out gusts. Their followers cheered every hit. Petrov stepped up last. Silent. No theatrics. He took his time. 10 shots, clean rhythm. 9 targets fell. The 10th, barely missed, pushed off course by a final wind burst. Still, the crowd erupted. Sterling grabbed the mic, voice booming. That, ladies and gentlemen, is excellence. I doubt anyone will top that today. He smirked, full of certainty. Then the announcer read the final name. Participant 47. Please take the line. No cheers, just a quiet ripple of confusion. And then Emily stepped forward. Emily walked calmly to the firing line, rifle in hand, head low beneath her cap. No fanfare, no sponsors, no insignia. Just silence and the weight of every eye turning toward her. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Is that the nurse?" Sterling squinted from the VIP booth, trying to place her. His smirk faded slightly. Petrov, standing off to the side, tilted his head. Emily set her rifle down, took a breath, then, without a word, ejected 9 rounds from her magazine. Let them fall. One clinked against the metal table, the rest landed softly in the grass. Gasps rippled through the crowd. 1 round, 10 targets. Sterling leaned forward in disbelief. Is this a joke? But Emily wasn't looking at him. She watched the range instead, watched how the targets moved, the wind machines hummed, the flags snapped. She didn't lift the rifle yet. She was waiting, calculating, reading the rhythm of the chaos like a conductor listening for the downbeat. Then she saw the pattern. Her window. She dropped into firing position, exhaled slowly, and pulled the trigger. The shot cracked like lightning across the silent range. The crowd held its breath. The first target dropped clean center hit. Then the second, the third, fourth. Gasps turned into stunned silence as one bullet continued its path. 5th, 6th, 7th. Now people were rising to their feet. 8th, 9th, and then 10th. 10 targets. 10 perfect hits. 1 impossible shot. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Even the wind seemed to pause. Then the silence shattered. The crowd erupted, shouting, swearing, clapping, demanding replays. Commentators scrambled over each other. Sterling's expression twisted from disbelief to panic. Viktor Petrov stared, lips parted, his stoic mask broken. Emily stood slowly, calm as ever, dusting off her knees. She slung the rifle over her shoulder and turned to the crowd. Her voice was steady, carried by the mic clipped to her collar. "My name is Emily Carter. 15 years ago, they called me Ghost Eye. A month ago, this range told me I didn't belong." She looked straight at Sterling. "Let's fix that, shall we?" The arena froze not from confusion, but revelation. Emily stood tall beneath the sun, her voice carrying over the stunned crowd. "I came here in scrubs and sneakers, not sponsored gear. I came with one bullet, and all of you told me that wasn't enough." She paused, letting the silence settle around her words. Turns out it was. Phones rose, live streams lit up. The name Ghost Eye spread like wildfire across social media, hashtags exploding in real time. Sterling tried to regain control, grabbing the mic from a stunned assistant. "There are procedures, regulations. We don't allow." He didn't finish. The crowd was no longer listening. Veterans in the bleachers rose first, fists raised in quiet salute. Then medics, then nurses, then strangers who saw something they couldn't explain but felt in their bones. She hit 10 targets, someone shouted. With one shot, the chant began low and slow. Ghost Eye, Ghost Eye, Ghost Eye. Emily didn't bask. She just stepped off the line, like the job was done. But everyone watching knew something much bigger had just begun. Cameras swarmed. Reporters shoved microphones forward. Commentators tried and failed to explain the physics. Sterling stood frozen, mic limp in hand, as his empire cracked beneath his feet. Emily turned toward the crowd one last time. "I didn't come here to humiliate anyone," she said. "I came to remind you what skill looks like, what service looks like. You don't earn respect with gear or money. You earn it with discipline and heart." Then came the twist no one expected. The prize money, $100,000, will be donated to St. Jude's Pediatric Wing at St. Vincent's Hospital. Because while some of us play soldier, others are still fighting real battles. The crowd roared. But Emily wasn't finished. She faced Sterling directly. "I have a challenge for you, Mr. Sterling. Open your doors. Let in the veterans, the nurses, the teachers, the real people. Or I'll use my story, my platform, and what's left of this spotlight to build a better range, right across the street." Sterling paled. The crowd erupted. The war had just flipped sides. Sterling tried to laugh it off, one of those fake, shaky laughs that comes too late to save you. "Let's not get dramatic," he said into the mic, voice cracking. "It was a clever shot, but business is business. We can't just—" He stopped mid-sentence. One of his investors, a silver-haired woman in a tailored suit, stormed down from the VIP box phone pressed to her ear. "Richard," she snapped, "our stock is down 12% since the video aired. Sponsors are pulling out. There are protests forming outside our Manhattan office." Another investor followed. "Do you have any idea what this is costing us?" Sterling opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Behind him, screens looped the replay of Emily's shot. 10 impacts, 1 bullet. The crowd's stunned silence. Her speech, her challenge. Marcus appeared beside Emily at the edge of the platform, calm and steady as ever. "They're not just losing a PR battle," he murmured. "They're losing the war." Emily didn't smile. She just watched as Richard Sterling's empire began to crumble, exactly the way it had been built. Loud, arrogant, hollow. By evening, the fallout was irreversible. Sterling's PR team quit mid-broadcast. Sponsors issued public apologies. 3 board members resigned. Hashtags like #GhostEye. Rising and Sterling down trended worldwide. News outlets ran back-to-back specials, The Impossible Shot, Who is Ghost Eye, from ER, nurse to national icon. Sterling arms, faces, backlash. After viral discrimination video. Behind closed doors, the board held an emergency meeting. It wasn't a discussion, it was a sentencing. "Your behavior has exposed us to legal liability," the chair said coldly. "Discrimination, hostile environment, reputational collapse." Sterling protested, pointing to profits to years of branding to loyalty. "I built this range," he snapped. A long pause. Then a voice from the end of the table, "No. You bought it with arrogance and protected it with fear, but the foundation was always cracked." She just pulled the curtain. By sunset, Sterling was escorted off the premises. Cameras caught him leaving head down, stripped of his badge, his team, and his illusion of superiority. Inside, the doors shut behind him. Outside, the world kept watching and cheering. Within 48 hours, the transformation began. The sign that once read Sterling Arms Elite Range came down in silence. In its place, a simple hand-painted banner, "Liberty Range Open to All." Patricia Martinez, a retired Army colonel and respected small business owner, was appointed interim director. Her first action, unlock the gate and step into the lobby where it all began. She reached up, tore down the members-only plaque, and turned to the waiting cameras. "Skill has no dress code. From now on, if you show respect, you're welcome here." Changes came fast. Veterans trained side by side with teachers and EMTs. The marble floors stayed, but the snobbery didn't. The coffee was still strong, but now it came with conversation, not judgment. Free range hours were introduced for first responders and hospital staff. A scholarship fund was launched for young shooters from underserved communities. And in a quiet office upstairs, a letter was sent. "Dear Emily Carter, we would be honored if you'd consider helping us build something better." The reply came 1 hour later. "Send me a blueprint. I've got work to do." 3 weeks later, Emily returned, this time through the front doors. No tension in her shoulders, no badge to flash, no permission to earn. She walked through Liberty Range as if it had always belonged to her. The air felt different, open, lighter. Classes were already underway, veterans mentoring teenagers, nurses learning tactical handling, instructors teaching with patience instead of ego. Near Bay 3, someone stood waiting. Victor Petrov. Gone were the mirrored sunglasses and swagger. He wore a plain black t-shirt, gear stripped down to essentials. There was no smirk, just sincerity. "Miss Carter," he said, his accent softer now, "I owe you an apology." Emily didn't speak. "Back then, I mocked you. I was loud." He looked down. "In my country, we say the loudest dog is often the most afraid." He looked up, met her eyes. "I don't want to be loud anymore. I want to be better. Would you teach me?" Emily studied him for a moment, then simply nodded. "First lesson, respect your target. Second lesson, stop calling me Miss Carter." He smiled for the first time, not cocky, but grateful. "Yes, ma'am." Emily didn't announce her role. She simply showed up. Twice a week, she walked through the doors of Liberty Range, not as a guest, not as a symbol, but as a guide. Her classes filled instantly. Not because of fame, but because of trust. She taught the fundamentals, stance, breath, patience. But her lessons always went deeper. Anyone can pull a trigger, she told a room full of young recruits. The real skill is knowing when not to. Victor attended every session, quiet, focused, always listening. He asked questions. He unlearned habits. Slowly, the arrogance burned away, leaving something rare: humility. One afternoon, as Emily adjusted a trainee's grip, a young nurse raised her hand. "Is it true you turned down $1 million endorsement deal to stay at the hospital?" Emily smiled, correcting the trainee's elbow. "Money doesn't save lives. Skill does. Purpose does." She glanced around the room, veterans, medics, single moms, teenagers from broken schools, all finding focus behind the scope. Besides, she added, "This is where I belong." And in that moment, no one doubted it. 6 months later, Liberty Range didn't just thrive, it redefined what a shooting facility could be. Community events replaced private galas. Scholarships replaced gatekeeping. Veterans taught kids from rough neighborhoods how to shoot, not for violence, but for discipline, confidence, and control. Police trained beside teachers. ER nurses stood next to retired Marines. and no one cared about your paycheck, only your respect. Emily watched it grow like a garden she never planned to plant. She taught, mentored, listened. She was still working shifts at the hospital, still driving that same Civic, still clipping coupons. Fame hadn't changed her purpose, had grounded her. One afternoon, a girl no older than 12 hit 5 bullseyes in a row. Her hands shook with excitement. "I want to shoot like you someday," she whispered. Emily knelt beside her. "You already are. It's not about hitting the target, it's about trusting yourself enough to try." The girl nodded, smiling. And across the range, Victor watched quietly, arms crossed, a ghost of a smile on his face. Ghost Eye hadn't just come back. She'd lit the fuse for something far bigger. A year to the day since the shot that changed everything, Liberty Range hosted its first Community Day. No red carpets, no tactical cosplay. Just real people, real stories, and real purpose. Families picnicked on the lawn. Veterans gave demonstrations in marksmanship and safety. Kids lined up for their first lessons, eyes wide, hands steady, hearts full. Local officers ran trust drills with teens. Paramedics taught trauma care workshops. A group of senior citizens practiced yoga beside the range, laughing through the wind. At noon, a crowd gathered at the entrance for the unveiling of a simple bronze plaque. It read, "Excellence has no dress code, in honor of Ghost Eye." Emily stood beside Marcus and Victor, arms folded, quiet as ever. When the cloth dropped from the plaque, the applause was thunderous, but she didn't step forward, didn't wave. Instead, she looked at the crowd, at who they were and what they'd built together. Let them cheer for the idea, she thought. The work speaks for itself. And in that moment, the nurse who'd once been dismissed now stood as the quiet foundation of a movement, not with noise, with legacy. While Liberty Range rose, Richard Sterling vanished. No press conferences, no comeback tour, just silence and whispers. Then, months later, a grainy cell phone video surfaced online. A man in a wrinkled polyester suit stood outside a used car dealership in Austin, Texas. His name tag read Honest Rick, and he was mid-pitch gesturing dramatically toward a minivan. "This baby's got third-row seating, built-in DVD, and a monthly payment that won't shoot you in the foot, no pun intended." The internet exploded. Is that Sterling, from tactical gear to trade-ins? Guess he finally found a trigger he couldn't pull. Attempts at rebranding had failed spectacularly. His YouTube channel, Tactical Truth, peaked at 173 subscribers, most likely bots or hate watchers. His last video, The Real War on Operators, had 17 views and 12 dislikes. He tried blaming cancel culture, the media, Ghost Eye herself, but no one cared. Not because he fell, but because no one was listening anymore. The world had moved on toward something quieter, stronger, and infinitely more real. And Sterling, he became the punchline of a story he never understood. While Sterling faded, Emily's shot only grew louder. A month after the one-year anniversary, the Discovery Channel aired a special, The Impossible Shot, an hour-long breakdown of how one bullet under impossible wind and timing conditions hit 10 moving targets. Ballistics experts recreated the setup using high-speed cameras, fluid dynamics simulations, and military-grade models. The verdict: it shouldn't have worked, one MIT physicist said. But she didn't just rely on math. She read the rhythm of movement and wind in real time. That's not calculation, that's intuition born from years of precision. The shot became a case study in physics classrooms. Trajectory equations were rewritten with Ghost Eye variables. High school teachers used it to engage students in real-world STEM. But the most accurate explanation didn't come from a scientist. It came from Emily in a rare interview. "The shot wasn't made when I pulled the trigger. It was made in every moment before every drill, every choice, every time I chose discipline over comfort. That's what most people missed. It wasn't luck. It was legacy, loaded into a single round. Late one evening after a long hospital shift, Emily opened her locker to find a small envelope tucked between her scrubs and trauma shears. No return address. Inside a single page, handwritten, slightly smudged edges, dusty. "Ma'am, I'm writing this from a base in northern Afghanistan. I watched your video on a busted phone passed between tents. I've played it 100 times. They told me I didn't belong, that I'd never lead, that women weren't made for this work. But after seeing you, I started training harder. I stopped apologizing for being here. Last week, I became the top marksman in my battalion. They call me Scope Ghost. I don't correct them. Thank you. For the shot. For showing me what's possible." There was no name, just a set of initials, and a photograph, dusty boots, fatigues, and a young woman kneeling by a scope, eyes calm and locked forward. Emily held the letter for a long time, then placed it inside her locker right next to her nursing credentials and the old photo of Delta Company. A reminder. Even when you don't see the ripple, it's already moving outward. Emily sat at her kitchen table late that night, the old Remington cleaned and oiled beside her, its cold steel glinting under the soft yellow light. She didn't touch it. She didn't need to. The weapon had done its job long ago. Now her tools were different: a chart, a stethoscope, a steady hand guiding a trembling patient through fear. But the mindset, still sharp, still quiet, remained unchanged. She thought of the girl in Afghanistan, of the students at Liberty Range, of the senior citizens doing breathing drills beside their targets, the kids from broken neighborhoods learning discipline through patience, not punishment. She exhaled slowly. "People think power is loud," she whispered into the silence, "but the most dangerous force in the world is steady purpose." Across the room, her phone lit up another request to speak at a Veterans Leadership Summit. She ignored it, not out of pride, but because she already had her post, and she was exactly where she was needed, teaching people not just how to shoot, but how to stand. At Liberty Range that afternoon, Emily stood before a circle of teenagers, some quiet, some restless, most skeptical. They weren't here to become soldiers. They were here because no one else had shown them how to hold focus, how to breathe through fear, how to aim for something real. She handed a girl a rifle. The girl hesitated. "What if I miss Emily?" Knelt to her level. "Then you miss, but you miss knowing, not guessing, not hiding." The wind picked up across the field. The target swayed gently. Emily stepped back. The girl raised the rifle, took a breath, and fired. The shot clipped the edge close, not perfect. The girl lowered the gun, disappointed. Emily smiled. "You hit more than you think." She turned to the group. "This isn't about guns. It's about choosing your moment, about standing still while the world tells you to sit down, about showing up even when no one believes you should." They listened, not because she demanded it, but because her quiet had weight, and they could feel it. At Liberty Range, a new space had been added, tucked behind Bay 6, marked only by a small wooden sign, the Quiet Room. No weapons, no gear, just a circle of chairs, a coffee pot, and a shelf lined with worn paperbacks, philosophy, history, poetry. It was Emily's idea. Not every battle was fought with a rifle. Every Thursday, veterans, nurses, teachers, and students gathered here not to compete but to speak. About fear, about failure, about pressure and silence and not knowing where you belong. Sometimes no one spoke at all, and that was okay. One afternoon, Victor sat with a young officer trembling from survivor's guilt. He didn't offer advice, he just sat beside her. Marcus read aloud from a dog-eared book of meditations. Emily poured coffee and said little, but when she did, it mattered. The hardest shot you'll ever take is forgiving yourself. The second hardest is letting others see the real you. The girl beside her nodded, tears in her eyes. And in that quiet space, another life began to aim again, not with bullets, but with meaning. Emily never called herself a leader, never asked to be followed. But the path she walked, steady, honest, unshaken, left footprints people trusted. At Liberty Range, routines became rhythms. Victor now taught beginner classes on Wednesdays, his tone soft, his pride replaced by precision. Marcus mentored at-risk teens, walking them through pressure scenarios with the patience of a man who'd seen war and come back for more than survival. Emily. She still taught her hybrid course marksmanship and mindfulness. Breath, trigger, thought. Your aim follows your mind, she'd say. If your thoughts are scattered, so are your shots. One day, a local journalist came to do a piece titled "From One Bullet to a Movement." He asked her the obvious, "Do you realize what you've started?" Emily looked out across the range. Young and old expert and beginner all standing side by side. "I didn't start anything," she said. "I just reminded people of what's worth aiming for." And behind her someone pulled the trigger, a clean shot, a perfect hit, and a future in the making. On the second anniversary of the shot, Emily stood alone at the far edge of Liberty Range, wind brushing against her hoodie, the same beat-up rifle resting gently in her hands. She didn't shoot. She just watched. Instructors guided young recruits. A mother and daughter practiced side by side. A boy in a wheelchair learned how to brace and breathe, his father cheering behind him. Victor waved from across the range, clipboard in hand. Marcus leaned against a pillar, laughing with a group of new volunteers. Emily looked down at her hands. Same calluses, same steadiness, but something softer beneath it all. She remembered the girl who walked into Sterling Arms in scrubs, clutching $20 bills, and hope. The jeers, the dismissal, the silence. And she remembered the moment everything changed, not the shot, but the decision to take it. A voice behind her broke the reflection. Coach Carter. She turned. A teenager, nervous, eager eyes bright. "Can you watch my stance?" Emily smiled. "Always?" Then she stepped forward and passed it on. The video of Emily's shot has been viewed over 100 million times. It's been dissected by physicists, mimicked by pros, studied by students. But no one's ever truly replicated it. Because the shot wasn't just about physics. It was about choosing stillness over noise, clarity over ego, purpose over pride. Now Emily still works at St. Vincent's quiet shifts, steady hands the hum of monitors instead of gunfire. The pediatric wing she funded is filled with Life Laughter new machines, second chances. Twice a week she teaches at Liberty Range. Her wait list stretches months, but she doesn't chase fame. She doesn't chase followers. She shows up, every day, because the most powerful thing you can do is keep showing up. Your shot may not be with a rifle, she tells her students. It may be a word, a choice, a stand you take when no one else does. Then she always ends the same way. Don't wait for permission. Take your shot. Because excellence doesn't care what you wear, where you're from, or what they say. She pauses, smiles. It just listens for the courage in your breath, and somewhere someone exhales and aims.